Go back to the session this year, and then I'll probably do this fairly short and do questions, like you quiz on you. There's lots going on. The last couple of years have been really different. We've all seen, we went through COVID. The state of Wyoming was given several $1 billion of federal money that we really didn't have much to do. So this year was very interesting. We literally converted a lot of that money into our different accounts and put a lot of it into long-term investments and savings for the state of Wyoming. So this year, the state of Wyoming put more money into savings than they have any time in their history. We took $1.4 billion, and roughly half of that, which was split in half, a quarter went to education permanent funding, a quarter went into the permanent mineral trust fund, and we created what we call reserve accounts, which is to make it where we've all seen these big budget cuts we do, and then we go a big surplus and a big budget cut goes up and down. So we took about half of that money and put them in what we call reserve accounts. And those will draw interest. They're a little longer term, and they'll help stable out our accounts for WYDOT and our different agencies so that they don't have 1 year of big surplus and the next year we're cutting by a whole bunch. Since I've been in, I think Wyoming is a roller coaster because of the minerals. We've gone everywhere from this year $1.4 billion of surplus to $1 billion shortfalls in the 12 years I've been in. So it's really an up and a down, and you never really know. You think it's good right now, it's that way. This winter, oil and gas was really good, as we all know. Gas is back down around $2 now. Oil's in the 70s, so we're looking pretty good, but it's somewhat declining right now as far as that goes. The economy overall is good. I guess past that on the session and where we go, you'll probably see some either budget shortfalls or close to it because of that money that we transferred to cost. Now we've got to go back to regular funding on those. Now we need tax dollars to bring those in. Good news is Wyoming's saved enough money now, about $1 out of 3 we spend is interest income off of our investment accounts now. The state of Wyoming has the largest sovereign wealth fund put together, which is what we saved the mineral money that's gone away. That'll be there for future generations. So for our kids, grandkids, great-grandkids, they still get to share some of the wealth that came in through our lifetimes. We often hear, why don't you give the money back to us? And I'm one of the ones it's not my money that belongs to the generations of Wyoming, and that's the way we do it. Past that, this session overwhelmingly was budget driven. I just looked up on my phone, there was just 5 veterans bills, women's driver's license bill, 2 property tax relief bills that I believe both failed, and skilled nursing home. And that's everything. Wyoming, we're pretty proud. We're the 50th state to get skilled nursing home. We've got one in Buffalo now, getting up and going, and there'll be an expansion on it as well. So past that, the overwhelming deal of the session was property taxes. Everybody in here knows that if you own property, it was an incredibly hard session. It was probably, and I didn't tally them, but I'll bet there was 15 or 16 property tax bills. Not a single one made it out of the House. I can't explain to you exactly what happened there. It's other bodies than us. The Senate passed 3 out to the House side. One of them passed. That's a constitutional amendment. You'll be voting on next time in the elections. I don't think it's up this session. It'll be up in 24. That'll change the property tax classes right now. Residential is lumped in with ag and commercial. That'll break the residential out and allow that rate to be able to be moved independently. Right now, it's all tied together. So you'll be voting on it. You'll hear a lot about it. The other two bills did not make it in the House. It was tragic. One of them was one that would have froze the rates pretty well. And for whatever reason, when they got down to the last stage, it was kind of held back on the floor, and they never even debated it. So we're going to go another year, and I don't think Weston's quite as bad. Kirk County has the highest property tax percentage increases in the state of Wyoming last year. They're subdivided. You folks are going to see it here as they cut stuff up and taxes go up based on the price at the other end. We're trying to deal with it. I'm not sure how to do it. 90 people is really tough. There's a lot of ideas. So, long and short, that's kind of the main vote. There's about 500 bills. I could probably talk for hours. A vast majority did not go anywhere. Not a lot of bills passed. I passed probably only one significant bill this year, and that was a follow-on on the charter schools to give education choice. We're going to have 2 or 3 new charter schools in Wyoming in the next couple of years. It's probably going to give people some choices. Only one small one. Chugwater is going to be a small one, but kind of get those for small communities, and it's ended up getting big ones that are kind of taking advantage of it. So, with that, I basically will stand for questions on anything. I'm happy to tell you what I know about what you'd like to hear. Yeah.
Could you explain charter schools a little bit?
Sure. Was asked to explain charter schools. So, charter schools have been around in Wyoming, but they haven't been very well accepted, and our laws kind of discourage them from happening. So, a charter school is still a public school. It's still funded by your public education system, just like the schools here are, but they're governed by a local board, and they tend to be a more traditional education as a whole. The ones I formed, they're the 2 big ones that are coming in will both be Barney Charter Schools. That's part of Hillsdale College. You'll hear that they're for profit. They're not. Hillsdale does everything they can they basically provide the deal, but their curriculum is more old school reading, writing, and arithmetic, straight down the line, probably a much more conservative education as a whole than you'll see in most of your public schools. Lots of parent participation in it. Charter schools nationwide, some have failed, but as a rule, generally the kids in charter schools perform much higher than they do in the other schools and tend to have a higher college graduation rate. It's a very traditional, probably looking at the age of you, it's probably more the education you folks got when you went to school than what we see now. I spend quite a little time in the schools now. We do not educate kids even now the way when I was in, which is in between a lot of you folks. Education's really changed, and I'm not saying it's bad. I think we do a good job, but it's very good. Yes.
So I know with some charter schools, like Minnesota and other places, they don't, teachers don't have to have licensure, but they're going to have, make sure that they have licensure in those schools?
We do. So the question is licensure. So that was the bill I did this year. My original charter school bill, we kind of exempted them out of huge amounts of the rules. And traditional education had real heartburn. Licensure was one that I didn't ever try to make it where they couldn't do it. But I'm a big believer, if you've got a charter school that's teaching trades, then you really don't have to have a degree in education to teach electrical, HVAC, some of that. There's ways around it. They allow some exemptions on that within the system. I'm still trying to work with the K-12 system. They had extreme heartburn, and I rolled rules back. It's not fair. We have to follow the rules, and you don't. I said, well, why don't we roll your rules back too? A novel thought is we have created a monster in our K-12 education system. Everybody has an idea how to educate, and guys like me have gone in and put it into law, and so they've got books. When your kids go to school, you've got to feel sorry. My daughter was a teacher, she's retired. The teachers are under immense pressure that they've got all kinds of boxes they have to check off. When I went to school, teachers went and the superintendent and the principal said, go teach, and I'll check in the classroom, and you give quizzes if you want to test. Now it's really lined out solidly, and I do believe we need to help the K-12 change some of the rules to make it further having fun. If you, I'm betting in this room, there's people that got kids and grandkids and their teachers. Ask them if they're having fun with the job. Because, like I said, my daughter loved it. She got up and then she went to Gillette and Fort Drop. She's bitter about the school system. And she loves teaching kids. She loves kids. She hates administration. She hates students. And I think that's across the board. You walk in school here at Newcastle, high school, middle school, grade school. Principals aren't happy. Kids aren't happy. Really hard. We got to have that, folks. That's for those of us that build our houses, do everything we do. They're a product of that system. Somehow, in my belief, we've really got to go back to making it where kids want to go to school. Further questions? Yeah.
There was I don't know whether it was in the House or the Senate, a bill brought up for a state bank, and it didn't get any traction. And I'm a little disgusted. You know, the Speaker of the House, I guess it was, stood up and said, "Oh, paper money is more solid than gold." And I know he's not that stupid, but it makes me mad that he thinks I'm stupid enough. I'll buy that. But there's a state bank of North Dakota, and there's like 6 of them in the country, and we've got $260 billion invested with BlackRock. And BlackRock is one of the most globalist, satanic company or corporation, whatever you want to call it, in the world. And now it's come out on TV and the internet and stuff that BlackRock might be in a little bit of trouble financially, just like the other banks. And if they go under, our $260 million is gone. It'll be just like any bank foreclosure. And I think we need to take that $260 billion and bring it home and invest it in the state by letting the state banks create another bureaucracy. Let the state banks run the money, loan it out, give them they got to earn money, let them get a cut for doing the service. And if we go bankrupt, like North Dakota, they're not a member of FDIC, but FDIC's already broke with the few banks that went broke. So if
I'll start there. So North Dakota is FDIC. You know, all the banks are, in order to get a charge, you have to go to FDIC. It's the only way to get a license.
But I'm not talking about the state banks. I'm talking about a state bank, and they are under constitutional authority. And if we go broke, the whole state of Wyoming backs that money. And if we went broke, or whatever, the state has some nice tractors, some nice homes. So we're not going to have nothing when BlackRock goes bankrupt.
Yeah. Well, I'll go through and do it as best I can. First, we don't have $260 billion. We have $26 billion. That's the state's entire portfolio is $26 billion. And that's spread over, that's not just all investable money. That goes everything from the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund to our retirement accounts, which is all our retirement for anybody that's worked for the state, school teachers, light-off people. You know, so it's $26 billion. Wyoming's,
maybe it's $260 million we have with BlackRock.
that could be possible. BlackRock, I get it. So we've gone through this. The debate's happening right now. I'm part of what deals with split board. Here's the really hard part. And, you know, the last year they've run through the scenarios. We talked about gold. So get gold, get dollars. If the state would have invested the money in gold 20 years ago, we'd have about 1/4 of the money we do now, because the stock markets have outperformed gold unbelievably. And the real debate that's happening right now is what do we do with ESG? We're a mineral state, folks. All of our money from this school here to schools statewide, all of our savings have come out of some type of mineral industry. And these companies have got our mineral industries under attack. Coal's virtually dead, and it's going to affect us here in Weston County without a doubt. All of us have friends and family that work in coal mines. I don't see a way they can hardly survive with what this latest round is, and so we understand it. The flip side of it is, at this point, about 30% of our income comes off investment income, and if you take a 2 or 3% knock because you fight with people, it affects where we go, and that means that either we cut spending or taxes get increased. So this is all a balancing act. I don't have the correct answers. They got to be carefully weighed out. Knee-jerk reactions will likely result in either cut in services. We're standing at the Senior Center. They're one of the ones that first get hit always. When we get into major budget cuts, I've sat on the ropes. Guess who we go after? We go after the ed stuff. So 80% of our funding is stuff we can't change. Department of Health, prisons, you've got your base funding. So these side things we fund are the first ones to get hit when we get a tough budget time. And I'm telling you, it's hard when you guys are calling me up and saying, hey, my grandma and grandpa are go there for meals every day and we can't run. Go ahead.
I wasn't promoting buying gold. I was promoting bringing the money home and investing in it in the state of Wyoming.
And we do that
And
right now.
we ought to do it with all of our money. And we get the interest off. We pay the people that borrow it, use it, the companies.
So they don't get the returns. So we invest. Virtually every bank in Wyoming has a minimum of $250,000. That's FDIC guaranteed that it's not damaged on. They put it in basically any bank that raises their hand in Wyoming. They'll do that. The returns tend to be about 1.5% to 2%. That's what you get when you put money in a bank. They loan it back out. They get 6 or 7, but you only get 1.5 or 2.
Well, that's what I'm saying, though. If the state had the money, the bank would get the 1% service charge, and we would get 5% that the farmers and the ranchers and the people in this state are paying in, and it's self-promoting.
So we have that, and they don't use it now. The state's got $50 million in their ag loan program, sits unused. I believe that's at about 7%. State's had a poor track record between you and I of being lenders. Those programs have been really tough. People come in and they start a business. Usually the reason they come to the States is because they can't get commercial money. And I can list a lot. We still invest a lot in those type of businesses. But it's hard. Weatherby and Sheriff is one of them. They brought Weatherby in, came with about 70 jobs. I think the state's got about $15 million invested in Weatherby. Magpul and Cheyenne. States will invest money if people come and they've got a way to do it.
See, but the state shouldn't be investing in it. We should be running through our state charter banks.
So if you run it through them, what they do is they take the 5% and they give it to you.
But it doesn't have to be that way. Under state law, you could reverse that. They get a 1 or 2% service handling charge, and the 5% comes back to the state.
We're circular to it. I'm happy to talk about that. Let's go down to the bank down here and say, would you loan money if we gave you swap the end of it? But we're open. That end of it, I'm thrilled to look at it, and I believe the state should invest as much money as they can inside the state for one. Yeah.
First off, thanks a lot for coming down and visiting with us today. But I do have a question. Representative John Bear wrote an article about you that said you walked off the Senate floor at least 50 times right before the vote was taken. Would you care to expound on that?
Yeah, I will. John Bear has twisted everything as far as he possibly can. Did not walk off before it happened. I'm president of the Senate. I spend an immense number of hours in the governor's office. Spend all kinds of time dealing with different agencies, different people, and this has gone on with Senate presidents, at least for the last 10 years I've been around, is it takes on a role when you're, as president of the Senate, you're the number 3 elected official in the state of Wyoming. It goes to the governor, secretary of state, myself. He portrayed that. I will tell you, he's like, well, how do we know where he's at on the pro-life? Well, folks, take a 12-year run. It's 100%. I have sponsors voted 100%. The other part I want to tell you, if you're worried about where I'm at on a bill, I have the ability to steal any bill in the state of Wyoming. They all cross my desk, and I can put any of them in the drawer I want to. if those bills are out, it means I think they're worthy to be debated, and we'll do it. I'm happy to talk to anybody about it. Probably the only thing he had of any legitimacy at all, and by the way, I'm very offended. He never called me, he never talked to me. He could easily visit with me. I could explain a huge part of what went on, where I'm at. I negotiated part of those very bills in my office, spent hours and hours. I was gone the last 2 days of session, folks, and I will plead guilty, but he did a blatant lie. He said I went to Mexico on vacation, and it was not true. 2 years ago, a company acquired our old family motel in Texas. It's a large one, and I got the ability to go meet with them with my son and grandson to try to do business on our ranch and our family businesses. I'm still a working legislator, and I left the last 2 days of the session. And I went down there on a personal business trip. I'm dang sure guilty of it. Folks, we still make a living the old-fashioned way. Our family works every day, and we owe a lot of money. And we went down there to try to figure out how to do our business. I lined everything up before I left. I can't vote absentee, so I missed 2 days of votes. We were down to the end of session. We knew where the bills were at, what was coming, and I was comfortable with setup where if I had to, I would have made it where I could get back. By most opinions, the Wyoming Senator ran as smooth as it has for a decade. I negotiated the budget this year myself. It was the first time in 30 years that it had been done before the end of session. I'm very proud of the way our body ran. Proud of my voting record. I'm happy to sit with anybody and talk about what votes did or didn't get missed, and what it mattered to you or to them. And I can tell you, if a vote was there, it made a difference. If I sit in my office, someone stepped off the floor, it was going to get down where it was down to one voter, it made a difference, or I needed to debate, I stepped back onto the floor and did it. Otherwise, you'd see me sitting in the office with people that
I assume he was meaning because you would be embarrassed by your vote.
and I am not. I stand behind my votes are there, and I'd be happy that if he wants to do a tab list, he can do it. I'll tell you exactly where I was at. The really big bills, property tax bills, I was there for all the votes on them. Probably the only bill that I missed this year that would be a big deal was chemical abortion bill of Salazar's, and that exact same bill was up last year, and I voted on it last year. It's not too hard to tell where I'm going to be at.
You care if I go again?
No, I'm happy. I've got another meeting at 10 o'clock, and other than that, I'm more than happy to stand here and visit.
Reading Sherry Steinmetz's letter about you was very condemning of you and your dictatorial practices down there. Would you care to answer on that?
I will. Same thing. I'm extremely disappointed. I've worked with Sherry for years, and I've spent a lot of time with her. President of the Senate, I ran it really. Decorum has got bad. I didn't allow people to scream and shout at each other on the floor. Didn't do it. But what her letter was about was removal of Dave Kinski as the appropriations chair. Big issue right now. Really happy to approach it. The committee came to me early on. I made Senator Kinski chairman. They came to me, and he would not work with his own committee. And I brought Senator Kinski in my office 4 or 5 times and said, you have to work with the committee. We're not a kingdom. Exactly what you accused me of. You're not allowed to take a committee and just make a unilateral decision. You've got 4 other people, and those decisions are made as a group. That's how we do it. We vote things up, we vote them down.
Okay, you claim to be a, conservative. Yet Kinski's, voted like 60% of the time conservatively, and the one you replaced him with is only 40%.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. So back to what I was talking about. In order for anything to get out of the committee, it requires a vote. So I could have left Senator Kinski in the committee, and here's what the result would have been. Vote after vote after vote after vote would have been 3-2 or 4 against Senator Kinski, because they do not support it. You have to, if you want to get something out of your committee, you have to work with it. And they're not all bees in the pod. They're not all ultra-conservative or liberals. They're all people that represent their people and they work together. So when Senator Kinsey refused to work with his committee, I sat down with him the last day before I left. I sat with the majority floor leader of the Senate and him and told him that he absolutely had to do it. And he went crazy and screamed and yelled. And it's truly within my power. I've been to our staff. She says it's not. I've been to the legal staff. The other end of it, I have the right. I cannot remove a committee member. I have no intention of removing Dave Kinsey from the Appropriations Committee. He's a good member of the committee. He's been there. He understands it. As a chairman, he's never chaired a committee in his life. Appropriations was too much of a committee for him to step into the chair. He had a misconception that when you're a committee chair, you tell the committee what to do. I've been chairs for a lot of years. When you're a committee chair, you work hard with your committee to get them to come around to your point of view so that you present that as a group of the body.
Yeah, but the Appropriations Committee has one of the worst reputations for killing good bills.
Maybe in the House, so our Appropriations Committee, if you want to talk about it, has been in the past, has been Senator Hicks, myself, Senator Steinmetz, and Senator Kinsey. It's the exact people you're talking about, and you know the House runs differently. I make very few comments about the other body. We're two independent bodies. We run on our own. I won't opine other than I'm disappointed in John Bear's. But I won't opine on how they do their business. They're run, you talk about Speaker Summers. I know him personally, know who he is. I'm not going to opine on what kind of business or how he does business, and I would hope they don't on how I do business. We just run our independent body. Further question?
Who appoints the Ethics Committee? I see that, as far as I can tell from the names, Eric Barlow, Chris Rothfuss, Mike Ginn, Dan Swanitzer, and now you're going to have Nethercott as the chair. There ain't none of them that I know of that are very conservative at all. So who appoints those?
Okay, I appointed the three in the House, and so everything you folks are doing is trying to tilt between conservative and not conservative. That's not what the Senate does. It's about policy for the state of Wyoming, and you pick people that actually get it. So, do you know what the Ethics Committee is and how it works?
Well, I know what ethics are and how they work.
Okay, so what the Ethics Committee is, we have a rule book. This is what happens when you run outside of our rules. And the Senate part of it did not work. It's been a broken system. The Senate voted as a body, not me, not a committee of mine. The Senate voted as a body to remove that section out of the handbook and to rewrite it. And so I appointed people to do it. It's kind of interesting. Barlow's been a speaker. He understands discipline and how to do it. Nethercott's a lawyer. It doesn't matter if I put somebody hard right or hard left, what they're actually doing, and I have to put a Democrat on it by the rules. So they decide. Whatever they decide, back to what you're talking, if you want it to be more conservative, anything they decide comes up to the whole body, and it can be amended on the floor and it can be changed. So anything that they come up with, if somebody doesn't like it, there's 31 of us, and I can stand up and say, I don't like Section A. I think you ought to lose your job if you spit on the floor. And the body will debate it and vote on it. So the committee is only the start of a process. The end of the process is the entire body decides whether they've done a good job or a poor job. That will get back to your conservative versus liberal or however you want to put it. But it's acted on by the entire body.
Okay, so who set the rules for the Senate now, where you're supposed to have a 2/3 majority vote to remove a chair? How does that work in this whole deal with
That rule is not there. That's an absolute bald-faced lie. What it says is it takes 2/3 to remove a member from a committee. I take that very seriously. We've done it once. Anthony Sharp got stripped of committees a few years ago. The rules clearly allow the President of the Senate to move committee chairs. He cannot take the chairman and remove him from the committee, but he can reappoint the chairman. And I've got a memo on it. I can get it to you. Legal counsel has been through it. LSO staff's been through it. It's very clear I have the authority to do it. I did it, just like to do anything else, that's going to be a hard decision. I went to our LSO staff and said, what rights do I have? And show me where it's at. And I did that. I can tell you this, I'm a rules, law and order guy. That's the reason the Senate got done the way it is. I tend to be pretty authoritarian about following rules and being solid about it. If you catch me speeding on one, I'm happy to stand for it. But I think we're all judged by the same book. Hopefully it's put your hand on it and you swear in, but we're all judged by the same book. And I tend to follow that. When I go to do something, I make stuff. Our LSO, the Legislative Service Office, has got a whole cadre of lawyers, and that's all they do is interpret laws and rules. And I went to them before the end of the session and said, what are my rights? Anything else? But once again, I'm happy if anyone wants to do questions that you don't want to do in public. I'm happy to stand in the corner and do them. A huge thank you to all of you veterans. I encourage you to pay a lot of attention to the politics because you got to see a dose of it here. This playoff of where we're at policy, liberal versus conservative, it's for real, and it needs to be, as I do consider myself. But there's a difference between told how you're going to be a conservative and what's truly conservative. And I truly believe that my voting record stands for itself. When you read the columns, you'll hear we spent way too much money. Well, when you save more than there's ever been saved in history, $3 were saved for every dollar that was spent. I'll represent to you that's fairly conservative in this business. So, yes.
One last question, I promise.
Like I said, I got till 10 and
last election, you made a statement on video that you would not support Weston County because we did not give you any campaign money. Would you care to answer?
I will. I will not support the Weston County Party. I support Weston County. I represent them, and that's evidenced. I'm standing in Newcastle. I don't represent Newcastle. I represent all of Weston County. I always have. But I'll be goddamned if I'm going to support a party that will not come out after I've won the primary, a Republican primary, and will not support the candidate that legitimately won the election. I don't care.
The reason they didn't want to give you any because they didn't feel you weren't following good Republican conservative values.
So they're judge and jury, huh? I guess, from my end, I'm a Republican.
But here's the problem, Ogden. You are my senator, but they are my party.
So
So
who elected me? Was it the party? No. It was all of you. It was the entire group as a whole. And while this was going on, the party was battling. I still decisively won the election. That tells me, you as a party, I'll look to you now and say, you as a party need to look inwardly and represent the people that elect you because you're not doing it.
My point is this. It's just like when we did J.D. Williams. Weston County sent 4 people down to vote on him that don't even live in his district. And that's not right. Not in America. Not the one I stood up for in the flag for 12 years. But 4 people decided whether he got in or not that did not live in his district. Well, if I go to Crook County, Republican Party don't care about me because I don't live in Crook County. And if you come over here to my party, I can't have no say into you because you don't need them to vote for you. You've got this party. It's just a mess. So needs to be corrected.
Well, what corrects is the voting. That's really what corrects it is who votes and how they vote. And you folks, or at least a good part of you, a vast majority, placed your trust in me to use my best decision to do next. If I'm doing a bad job of it, you vote me out and take me out, but you won't get a chance to do it again because I'm done. I'm on my last term. Won't be back, and I won't run for anything else. I've proudly served, and I think I've done a good job. The party stuff was very painful for me. I've been to Republican convention since I've been a teenager. Been a strong Republican, been a state committee man, and to win a primary that I've been a part of helping candidates all my life, and to have a county party turn their back on me is unbelievably painful. I'm going to tell you, you come to the events, you talk, you do the stuff, and I can tell you from my end, as far as your local party, you won't see my face there. You'll see me at veterans events, you'll see me at whoever wants to invite me to chambers, any of the constituents groups. But why would I walk into a group that openly has been hostile and does not support me? There's no reason for me to go there to get in a shouting match with somebody that thinks that I'm evil or bad. Yes, sir. Third back.
What's the story I keep reading about Bill Gates building a mega nuclear power plant in Wyoming? I mean, you think that's good for the state of Wyoming?
So, yeah, he was just there. They were all just in Rock Springs. They're doing what's called a natrium reactor down there.
Repeat the question. Everybody.
The question was Bill Gates building I think he said a mega reactor, nuclear reactor, Rock Springs, or Kimmer, Wyoming. What do I think about it and where am I at on it? And, the jury's out right now. They're in the planning stages on it. Supposedly it's a very safe reactor. It's back to what we talked about as far as investing money in Wyoming is, part of the future, if we're going to be green, and I'm not in control of this, is how are we going to turn the lights on in these buildings? Because I will tell you, if it's wind, they might be flickering on a day like today. It's a tough deal, and from my end, if he's going to bring, I think the numbers 2,000-3,000 jobs down there, and then around 500 permanent jobs. I guess I'm open to look at it. Anybody that's doing it. You can do the same with the rare earths. We got mine in Cook County and the processing plant out there. Dangerous materials, maybe jobs, yes. That's part of what you do policy-wise. Is to weigh it out and do it. If you want to say no to everything that has a risk, then probably your kids are going to be working in another state. We've got to do something as far as economic development. Not saying it's perfectly right. Time will tell. There's 2 or 3 years yet in the planning process on it. So I will tell you this. I'm openly not opposed to it at this point in time. I'll be open to about anything that looks at jobs, probably other than selling pot on the streets.
What you got, Dan?
I think we need to acknowledge our state rep over there for going over to, what was it, Jackson Hole, and they did a great job with the elections over there, elected a few conservatives, so thank you very much.
Yeah, that was a great job up there, by the way. It's how the process works. There's winners and losers, and I thought, by all accounts, from what I heard, the deal in Jackson went very well. And that's what democracy does. You may or may not like who wins or loses, but that's who you work with. And I can tell you from my end, that's the deck of cards you're dealt. And you can like it or not like it, but all you do is hurt yourself if you don't deal with it.
Okay, I'd like to thank you for showing up for us today. Ogden?
Thank you very much, everybody.